our stock of choice is Persimmon PLC, and we rank this a strong buy.
A little bit about the company. Persimmon is the third largest home builder in the United Kingdom, and it's ranked second by profit. Persimmon trades under three brand names: Persimmon Homes, who focus on family housing; Charles Church, who focus on executive housing; and Westbury, who focus on affordable housing. And affordable housing was a recent provision that came in 2018. They also have other brands. One is FibreNest, which basically ensures that homes have broadband service and internet connection from moving in day onwards. They also have three offsite manufacturers: Space4, who work on framing; Brickworks, who give them concrete bricks; and then Tileworks, which will help with roof tiling, but that's due to come in the second half of this year.
Persimmon has been able to have an equal amount of sales throughout the north and south of the UK, and with their products within their different brands, they've had Persimmon, which does apartment and family homes, just as Adit said, which holds 76% of their revenue, followed by Charles Church, which gets 14% of their revenue, and finally the Westbury Partnership, that gets 10% of their revenue. Overall, they have a very strong position in the market, and they hold 10% market share. They're actually the market follower to Barratt Developments, which is actually the market leader here, and they are also one of the 4 UK house building companies that is actually listed on the FTSE 100 index. So what makes Persimmon unique is their business model. They do everything from the ground up themselves. So they start by obtaining and planning and getting the permission for the land that they will be building their homes on. Then they select and buy the land, and they design and construct the homes using their internal off-site manufacturing of brickworks and tileworks, and they keep on improving those. And then they do the sales and the customer care. So we rate Persimmon as a strong buy. At its current price, £22.70, we think that they have the potential to grow to £53.87 by 2023. And while this may seem like a very bold prediction, with our operational benefits and investment benefits, we think this is a very reasonable prediction.
What's the most unique thing on Persimmon is they've got offsite manufacturers, so they've got a source of internal supply, and they've had additions to their house building and designing capabilities through Tileworks. And this difference these offsite manufacturers have made has been pretty significant. An example is Brickworks, who was introduced in 2018, and when they came in, after 5 months of their introduction, the stock price had grown 320 pence. We predict that Tileworks will have the same effect, given it's got the same structure as Brickworks, and Persimmon themselves said with these internal suppliers, their supply chain pressures are eased.
So recently, Persimmon has incurred a lower cost of land, and with this, they've also seen in the past that they've had a growing supply of land every year, and they also have announced that they have foreseen strong visibility of future land supply. And with this visibility of future land supply and a decreased cost in land, they have the potential for they have great potential for future growth. So, along with this, in the past few years, Persimmon has been growing their product range, and last year they ventured into the affordable housing market in the UK. This is a very high demand market that is in a major shortage. In fact, the National Housing Federation announced that last year there was a need for 145,000 affordable homes in the UK, but only a margin of this need was met. In its first year in the affordable housing market, Persimmon was able to add 2,000 affordable homes, and we think this will just only continue to grow.
Zero debt. So what's really unique about Persimmon, especially compared to its biggest competitors, is they have a very healthy balance sheet with zero debt. They've got very high market liquidity. And what this zero debt means especially is that during times of recession and high interest rates, they are relatively stable. In comparison, their biggest competitor and the market leader, Barratt Developments, had £190 million of debt. So during downturns, a company like Persimmon will be more stable than companies like Daryanani. Okay, now on to the investment benefits. One of the big benefits we see is that it has a high dividend yield. So Persimmon's dividend yield is at 10.83%. The average of the 3 largest competitors is 3.1%, and the FTSE 100 itself trades at a 4.9% dividend yield. Given that it's both an earning and growth asset, having that in an equity portfolio helps to diversify the portfolio, and also the return on a stock like this has lower risk, especially because it is also an earning asset. Moreover, with the current prospects of there either being no Brexit or Brexit with a deal, we believe that the past uncertainty and the low investor confidence can be resolved and levels of certainty can rise, which is positive news for the housing market. Currency appreciation, again, a delayed Brexit will reduce uncertainty or no Brexit at all, and we predict that the pound will rebound and the currency will appreciate.
So currently the UK has seen an overall housing shortage, particularly in the affordable housing, and Persimmon can leverage this shortage. And recently, the UK has also seen an increasing industry output, and in fact, the past 5 years, there's been an increase in 55% in its output. Last year, the 2017 to 18 year, the housing supply increased by 222,000, which is 2% up from the previous year, but it was estimated by the National Housing Federation that there was a need for 340,000 homes, which is far from what was actually supplied.
This is on a yearly basis as well.
So, what we saw last year in December 2018, we saw that there's a 3%, there's a fall from 3% to 0.5% in the house price and annual growth, and this was due to the uncertainty due to Brexit, which I talked about earlier. And what we did see as well is that there was high activity in house buying in densely populated areas such as the Midlands and North England due to the efforts of affordable housing. And analysts do predict that by 2023 there will be a 10.3% cumulative growth in average house pricing in the UK.
So to look at the competitive positioning, we use the moat analysis and then the Porter's 5 forces. I'll begin by looking at the moat. We put it as a wide moat. We don't have many reasons, but we have very solid reasons, and those are 2 of them: build efficiency and cost efficiency. Build efficiency, what again is so unique about Persimmon is they have internal suppliers, so they have supply readily available, and that therefore makes their supply process and their building process a lot faster than their biggest competitors. Also, they have cost efficiency. Given that the internal brands produce in bulk, their costs are lower. Their costs are lower because they experience the economies of scale. So the company as a whole has lower costs. So the Porter's 5 forces. So the threat of new entrants we've rated as a moderate threat. What's happened is the housing market was an oligopolistic market, but the UK government had done a lot to try and break that market structure. So barriers are fairly low. However, with Persimmon's low costs, there isn't that much of a threat. The bargaining power of suppliers, we put the threat as pretty low. There's less external supply needed than other companies because they do have their own internal suppliers. The bargaining power of consumers, again, we rate as a low threat. They've got a growing customer base, so the bargaining power of a single consumer obviously falls, and this customer base is obviously growing through the affordable housing provision. The threat of substitutes we put as moderate. Yes, there are substitutes in the market, there are different companies. What makes Persimmon unique is they've now, in the past 2 years, focused heavily on their service efforts and customer care systems, satisfaction systems, so they're both product and service oriented. The rivalry amongst current players, we predicted a pretty low threat because of their differentiation through their off-site manufacturing capabilities. The revenue drivers, 3 of them. The first one is an increased product range. Because they ventured into a new market, affordable housing, they've got a greater customer base, and obviously the range of products has grown. Increased production generally, as you can, not there, but 3% more house completions in 2018 and 2017, so the numbers up to 16,449 in terms of house completions, and rising prices. So even though they have focused more on cheaper and affordable homes, there has still been a 2% increase in average house prices, as you can see from 2017, which is at £238,000 right now. So our financial analysis, profitability, so our net income growth predictions for 2019 has been at 15%, then in 2020 it's 17%, and then 21 to 20 through to 23 at 20%. Our estimated revenue growth is at 9% for the next 2 years, and following that at 12%. Comparatively, Barrier Development's revenue growth in the past 4 years has averaged at 4.8%, so this is comparatively a huge margin. And liquidity, again, as we've said, they've got no debt, they're cash rich, They've got a 15.4% free cash flow yield and a 10.83% dividend yield. So to get to our target price, we use a discount cash flow model. So most of you guys know how this works, but we took the net income for the next 5 years using our growth rate predictions. Then we took the present value of those values, we added them up, then we took our terminal value, multiplied that by our multiplier of 8.01, and then divided that by our discount rate of 7.9% to get this value. So we added these two values up to get our total equity value, which we divided by the total number of outstanding shares, and then we arrived at 53.87 pounds. So valuation, the target price we have at 53.87 pounds is 136% increase in total return, and our two major assumptions is the discount rate at 7.9%. How we calculated this is by adding the risk-free premium rate of 1.2% to the global equity risk premium of 6.7%. And our growth rate assumptions are determined by the industry and company performance, the geopolitical changes, and historical data.
So with any investment, there's always risk, and with Persimmon we see two. So in the past, they've been thought to have poor customer service and satisfaction, but in the past few years, they've worked really hard on this, and currently their customer service and satisfaction is a very high standard, and as long as they keep it at this, they should be able to see growth easily. The second risk is the Help to Buy scheme, which actually gets a great proportion of the house. Persimmon receives majority of their sales from the Help to Buy scheme, which is a scheme in the UK that enables the low income population to be able to buy and rent homes around the UK. And some uncertainty about the future stability of this scheme may cause Persimmon to underperform, but with the amount of help that this scheme helps to aid the shortage of homes in the UK, we don't see that this scheme will have any uncertainty. Also, Persimmon as a whole, the company has a chairman that just got in place last year that's been doing really well, Roger Devlin, who heads 4,900 employees, and along with this, they have a board of 2 executive directors, 4 independent non-executive directors that help make company-wide decisions, and overall they have a stable and sound structure as a business. Thank you.
So I was happy to see the valuation model. I just want to challenge you on your assumptions a little bit, see what you thought about them. One is the 20% growth. If you look at it, the growth was lower than that, and then you guys chose a 20% number. You talked a little bit about why, because in the past it was higher. But is that realistic to assume a 20% growth, the next few years out?
Yeah, I think it is, because if you look at in 2016, so that's 2 years back, there was a 24.1% growth rate, and obviously it has fallen. I think that's majorly due to Brexit, but I think once it ends all that drama about Brexit, I think prices will, net growth income will rise. So we predicted 15% and then up to 17%. So yeah, 20%. But we do believe it can reach there.
Okay. And then similar question on the debt used. No debt was a positive, and they have lots of free cash flow. Would you recommend this company take on some debt though, so they can grow? Because debt isn't an evil thing always. So.
That's true. Potentially they can. They do have a lot of free cash flow in saying that. But obviously, again, the more debt you take on during those recessions and during those periods of high interest rate, there is that increased risk. So yeah, I guess maybe it could be managing the amount of debt they take on, not taking on a number like Barrett does,
right.
190 million pounds. Right. Yeah, manageable amount.
You mentioned that business model is unique.
Yeah.
Because they buy land, they design, they construct, and they sell. Wouldn't all developers do the same?
See, what's unique about them is, they source the land and they buy land and then they build the house. So that's like all developers. But as we talked about a few times, they have tile works and build works, brickworks, those are there under the Persimmon company. They have those brands which help with offsite manufacturing and Space for which do frames of houses. So as a company that builds homes, they have those brands to help do everything. So everything's within the company. They have FiberNet as well. So when you buy a house from Persimmon, you get everything from top to bottom to even the internet in the house, all from them. So then they have so then you only go to Persimmon. So that's why being buy is unique.
So, I think you articulated a competitive advantage as well. One thing I'd like to understand better is, I guess for a developer in terms of access to land bank, and that's a key requirement to grow. So what's the advantage Persimmon has versus competition in terms of getting access to land, and what restrictions, if any, are there in terms of government approval of land acquisition?
Well, what we know is that Persimmon have reported that at the moment they have a abundance of land, and they have strong visibility of future land supply. So I don't feel that that is actually any issue that has come about to them, as they focus more about helping with everything within the company to boost that customer service and satisfaction that they had issues with, and making their company the one-stop shop by adding all these different brands underneath their company. And this will, I think, in itself will give them growth. And even while the current state has no issues for getting land supply, like you said, but after they build their company, I don't see that this will be an issue regardless of anything that happens.
But yeah, I think what you're saying, you're right in saying that it's the same for everyone else, the available land bank, the falling prices. But what's important, as you said, is sustainability. And what we thought was really good to see is that in the Persimmon 2018 report, they themselves say they have a strong visibility of land supply. So the fact that they're almost assuring us, or assuring the investors that, you know what, we've got the foundational sort of elements like in sight, and we know where to go from in the future.
Yeah, so even in the past few years, they've seen that last year they see 33 million decrease in the cost of land, but they still increased their land supply in plots to build more homes in last year.
Just one question following that: how quickly do they turn over their land bank relative to competition? Oh, firstly on standalone, and also relative to competition. Are they better than competition, or?
They're not. They're just similar to competition. So yeah, obviously that's one area. I think Taylor and Wimpy is one brand. I don't know their exact timing, but I think they may have a slightly quicker turnover time. But yeah, that is a point to consider.
Yeah, but one thing they do have to them is the fact that in their first, while they do maybe they do take a bit of, they're not the fastest at homes, but with their improving of the way they structure their building of homes, so everything within the company, they'll get faster. And as we just saw that they entered into affordable housing, which would definitely boost the speed of them being able to build houses, as before they were doing a lot of different houses, from like family homes to anything. But entering this affordable housing sector that we talked about, which has a high demand, like we can see a lot of growth from there.
Okay, thank you so much.